Hey everyone, so today we've got Sam Byrne, and Sam is the Secretary of the Co-op Federation. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Kerry.
So Sam, could you tell us a bit about the Federation?
Yep, so we're a peak body for cooperatives based in Sydney, but with member cooperatives up and down the east coast of Australia. About 95 member co-ops at the moment in all different industries. So in agriculture, but also in childcare, ski lodges, fishing, almost you name it, we've got a member co-op from that industry. So we exist to support and encourage cooperative enterprise. And I don't believe there's a co-op on Norfolk Island yet, but hopefully one day soon.
Thanks, Sam. And how do you support your members? What kind of things do you do?
So we help people to form new cooperatives, we help people to run them, and we even help people to close them at the end. So the full life cycle. We have a manual about cooperatives giving, it's a 100-page document, and which you can find on our website as well. But we run governance training specific for cooperatives and to how cooperatives should work. And we connect cooperatives, help them to network, run a conference, and help them with all the technical aspects of co-ops too. So it's very much a family, and that's one of the fundamental principles of cooperatives, is that they're supposed to cooperate and work together. And if one of my co-ops has a problem they can't solve, I can generally find one of our other members to help them solve it.
Is that what you love about co-ops, Sam?
I certainly love it, as I think it's a much more human, supportive sort of way to organise and to do business. So the people in cooperatives are great. They've come together, for a common purpose, and so that culture is really great. But yes, also for my day-to-day job, it's the diversity. Every day sometimes I need to be an expert on dairy, and other times I need to be an expert on video game development. So it's personally it's a great challenge. But there's not many people who I think experience that collegiate, that working together environment of co-ops that aren't impacted by it. And it's just it's a great way to solve business problems and solve community problems, and working together in a democratic fashion.
So Sam, when I hear people talk about co-ops, they talk about it in two different ways, and one is a way of business practice and the other is a legal structure. Could you talk to that a little bit?
Yep. So in one ways, co-ops are just another organisational business structure. So you can have a company, you can have an association, you can be a sole trader, you can be a trust, etc., or you can be a co-op. So in one way, that's all it is. It's just another type of structure for an entity you want to establish for whatever purpose. But in other ways, it's very much a culture. So there's international cooperative principles that are agreed globally and are written into the laws in every country across the world. And they're principles on how co-ops must operate. And if you don't operate following those principles, you can be held to account. Those, that it's the only structure with that sort of principle framework. And one of those principles is concern for the community. Another one is democratic control. Another one is autonomy and independence and cooperation. So they're concepts like that co-ops need to operate by. So I guess you can say we're just a business structure, but we also are a really unique one, and one that's very much a family.
And are there different types of co-ops, Sam?
Yes, so it's a very flexible model. The first co-op I joined was a corner store where the customers were the members, and you had to purchase, so much in goods from the store every year to maintain your membership, and it was the customers that owned and voted in the board and ran the co-op effectively. So that's called a consumer co-op. There's worker co-ops where the members of the co-op, instead of having to purchase from the co-op, they have to work in the co-op to maintain their membership, and that's a totally different structure. And then in agriculture, there's producer co-ops where members must produce a certain amount of goods, services to the co-op every year to maintain their membership and support the co-op. So there's that sort of and then you can have co-ops where there's both producers and consumers as members and they work together. So there's a range of applications where it sits, and yeah, in all, that's why you can also be not for profit and for profit as a co-op. So either way, and those are so it is a very flexible and a model that suits a lot of business and organisational applications.
So, what could you give an example, Sam, about why somebody would choose a co-op over and above a separate Pty Ltd or sole trader?
Sure, there's a few really key reasons. First, I think the principles and that sort of focus on a social purpose as well is really important. If that's what if that's the ethos that whatever your project has, then choosing the co-op model gives you a bit more of that framework. This active membership that I was just talking about, where you have to not just be a member, but actually sort of support the co-op, do something, be active, be loyal to the co-op, is another reason to choose the model. You'll know that your members need to be active and support it, and that helps with the viability of any organisation. They're fundamentally democratic co-ops, so it's one member, one vote. And if with a cooperative, you know that the people who own it and control it are going to be focused on the benefits to them. So it's not going to be about making short-term profits for external capital or external shareholders. It's going to be about longer-term benefit for the members of the co-op. So the co-op structure very much gives you that focus, and it. I guess probably the fourth thing, if that was three things before, the fourth thing would be that you can it really has to be a project where you're willing to work together, and there may be large players and small players who are members of the co-op, but it won't be one large player driving the organisation, because in the end, however big they are or however influential they are, they still only have one vote in the co-op. So it's it has it has that focus and that longevity issue. So for example, in agricultural co-ops, when a farmer stops farming, well, they're not producing product into the co-op anymore, so they can't remain a member. The co-op is about people who are actively farming. They might retire, take their share capital out of the co-op, go off and retire, and new generations will be able to join and produce product for the co-op going forward. So they've very much got a long-term focus, a focus on the benefits of the broader community and the members, and they're designed to build value and store value for a community and down the into next generations.
So that sounds really great, Sam. What happens, and I'm sure you've seen incidences of this when humans clash.
Do humans clash, Kerry? Yes. So that's another service we do, is conflict resolution for some of our co-ops. And the first thing I'd say is that humans clashing or conflict is in every organisation. It's not just co-ops, and it won't. Any organisation can be torn apart by division, and it doesn't. And I would generally say that when people enter a co-op, they know it's democratic. They know they may have to give and take on the decisions and what the co-op does. And so I think they'll generally come with a better frame, a better starting point. So there's no evidence that there's more conflict in co-ops than any other structure. There's quite a lot of evidence. There's evidence in the UK that co-op startups after 5 years are, 70% likely to be around, whereas other structures it's about 40%. So there's certainly not conflict, dividing those sort of startup co-ops in the UK. There's lots of evidence that it's a really strong model when you're starting a new organisation. But co-ops have the same processes to resolve, resolve disputes and resolve conflict, and sometimes that will happen. But there's a lot, one of those principles, the international principles of co-ops is about education and about member education. And so that's really what co-ops need to focus on. And if members understand that they're, what benefits the co-op is delivering to them, then hopefully that'll mean less conflict and everyone, swimming in the same direction down the stream.
Do you think co-ops have more capacity than other business models to, hold the people that are invested in it to that core purpose that they're serving?
I think it's, if you go into something, if in a corporate environment where you might be the largest shareholder, you control the organisation, that's quite a different framework that basis that you've gone into that project. But if you go into a project with 5 or 10 other people, with the purpose needs to be clear. But if you're clear on that purpose, then I think it's a great way forward. I mean, it's one of the things that I should mention is that in Australia at least, co-ops need to have 5 members, so there's a minimum 5 members. You can sort of get away with less, but it's more difficult. Generally, principle is that 5 members. So it's not something for 1 or 2. It's got to have a sort of a group right from the start, and that done well and well planned. Like any business needs to have a good plan and a clear objectives and be well run. That doesn't matter if it's a co-op or a company or whatever. It needs to have all that. Long as you do all that, things will go well.
So Sam, somebody wants to start a co-op or a cluster of people want to, where do they start?
So it's probably good to get some advice. I mean, we're one of those sources of that advice, about take you through the sort of fundamentals of how that active membership concept works, what the principles are, and how you would structure the organisation, how you get in, how you would get out as a member, all those sort of things. What would happen if it closed, and go through the sort of scenarios. So that's probably a good first place to start. Sit down to someone and talk. And co-ops do take a little bit longer to establish because they're democratic and they need to be. It's best if people have thought through what the co-op's going to do. But yeah, otherwise it's a fairly simple process. We've in Australia there's specific co-op law which you can use to set up a co-op. It's state and territory based in Australia, and we would have in Norfolk, we would have to use on Norfolk Island, we'd have to use the the company structure, the company law that's there, and set up a co-op under that sort of law. But it's a process. You get the rules, the fundamentals, the constitution of the co-op agreed, and then you have a meeting and decide together as the founding members to form the co-op, and then you have an entity and off you go, and hopefully achieve great things.
In your experience, Sam, is it wise for people that want to set up a cooperative to have a third party to help to facilitate those early steps?
Yeah, I think so. We're not while you would be surprised how large a slice of the economy cooperatives, mutual type entities are. The education and the experience out in the community is not strong. Certainly in Australia and in New Zealand, I'd have to say there isn't enough education, not just of people. The public, but also in the professional advice areas. So the lawyers, the accountants are not required to learn about co-ops at the moment. One of the things that my organisation is trying to campaign on and work on is to ensure that they do learn more about cooperatives. But with that sort of lack of knowledge for a lot of people, setting up a co-op would be a new idea, and so I think advice would be very would be a good thing to get. The co-op sector. Other co-ops very much want to help people to set up cooperatives, and that's why my position and my organisation exists. And so it's a large part of what I do is to help people to establish them. But yeah, there's some things to think through and think how it's going to work. But the same way that it is for any entity, if you're going to start a project, run an organisation, then you need to plan it out properly.
Last question, Sam. When COVID's obviously had a large impact on many businesses, how are you seeing the co-ops that you're working with faring during this time? And if you can, how's that faring comparatively speaking to different types of entities?
It's interesting. I mean, really, one of the triggers for what's been a resurgence in the last 10 years globally in cooperative enterprise. I see two key triggers. One was the global financial crisis. A lot of cooperatives and mutual type entities survived that very well. A lot of the cooperative banks globally really did well compared to their competitors because they're based more in their communities, based more on longer term with a longer term plan. And I think that was a real trigger that time, 10, 12 years ago. And the second thing is technology. So some of the IT, the platforms, what you can do now online has made it much easier for people to run democratic organisations, to involve people, and that sort of what's now called platform cooperatives, which are cooperatives really just based on a website or on an IT platform, has really helped co-ops to So I think we've proved that we're very resilient in now with COVID again. I'm seeing, because of the diversity of industries we're in, some co-ops have lost their industry and are quite devastated by it, as is as in every other business structure. But others are, they're built on solid foundations. They're built on a foundation of active membership, of loyalty, of democracy, of involvement of their members, and their members are mucking in to keep them afloat at this difficult time. Certainly, obviously in the Pacific, there's been it's been devastating for the economy, for tourism, for a lot of the agriculture in the Pacific as well. So I know there's serious effects, but that's not just for co-ops. That's for everybody. But look, co-ops are they aren't as speculative as risky organisations, and so they do, in a crisis, they do tend to survive better. I don't think that's just my inherent bias and love of co-ops.
And I am aware out there in the marketplace, a lot of sole traders are really having a hard time at the moment, but a lot of that's because they don't have that other person to bounce off. So obviously co-ops are, filling that gap in many ways.
A lot of co-ops are made up of sole trader members. So we have taxi co-ops in all over New South Wales, and each owner of the taxi is a sole trader. But they've certainly had they've been devastated. But the co-op is there to support them and assist them, and bring them together with other taxi owners. So it certainly provides a place where they can gain support and work together to get through. So I mean, they, like taxi co-ops, for example, have been agreeing to work less hours, so together they'll share the hours, because there's less work around for them, but together they'll agree to do that, and that helps to get them all through the crisis. So yeah, co-ops can be very much a support for that sort of work. I mean, fishing co-ops are the same. They've well, actually they're doing very well in Australia at the moment, because people are cooking a lot at home because they're not going out, and so people are buying fish. So actually the fishing co-op's doing very well, and because we've had rain, that comes down the rivers and boost fishing stocks as well. So actually fishing co-ops are going great. There's yeah, there's some that have benefited and some that haven't, and but hopefully there are, because they exist for the members. When their members when their members are suffering, the co-op will step in. I mean, just one other example that comes to mind is that a few years ago, we had very low milk prices in Australia for whatever reason, and Norco, which is one of our big dairy, well, the biggest dairy co-op left in Australia, then sort of shared out some of its reserves to members to get them through those tough times. So those are the things that a co-op will do. Hears that its members are suffering and help them. Whereas, if that had been a sort of corporate profit-taking structure, why would the shareholders want to give out more of their profits? But the co-op is just giving their money, giving money back to the members who own and control them anyway.
It's a great example. So, Sam, people can find more information on the website that you can see on the screen, which is fed.coop. And what's your email address if they wanted to get in touch with you?
Yep, so it's just sec@fed.coop. So the first three letters of secretary, SEC, and then at fed.coop. Be very happy to hear from anyone who'd like to talk more about cooperatives.
Thanks for joining us, Sam.